Okay, so I have a confession to make. I'm just going to say it. I am a heavy drinker of water. And I have a very fussy palate when it comes to water, and I have developed a habit of a preference for spring water. In fact, traveling nowadays, one of the kind of biggest downside for me traveling is not having access to beautiful spring water. Now, I am fortunate enough. I live in the country with the largest amount of fresh water in the world. I think it's 2% of the world's drinking water, or something like that. It's produced in Canada, or 2% of the water on the planet is drinking water, and most of it's in Canada. And one of my reasons for coming back to Canada, believe it or not, intuitively wise, was I just wanted to be near the spring water. I love the taste of it here. And I get into a car, I drive about 45 minutes and bottle and gather my own spring water. That inspiration came to me initially through David Wolf. He was the person who really turned me on to spring water and how amazing it is. But I remember my first experience as a child, being a city kid. We were driving up to the mountains, and my mother, who was known for crazy ideas, kind of out there, she definitely heard a different song that she danced to and different beat. And she suggested that we stop by the spring and drink water. Now, this wasn't just like kind of, from a tap kind of spring, it was literally from a spring. And I remember being freaked out by that and thinking that is like so weird. But I also remember what it tasted like. And literally, I remember it like one of those, the clouds open up and the sun peeks through. It was so delicious. It was sweet. And I always remember that memory and thinking, wow, this is nothing like tap water. And in fact, when I have friends come over and they bring their children, the parents often think that I'm being a bit mean because all I have is spring water for them. And they're like, kids won't drink spring water. And they're surprised when they see them going back 3 and 4 times to the tap and helping themselves to spring water, because their beautiful, precious little taste buds haven't been destroyed. They can actually taste the chlorine and the chemicals in tap water. And we're seeing now that a typical sample of tap water can have up to 32 different pharmaceutical drugs, the residues in it, because they can't totally purify that from the water. So the reason I decided to do this specific video is Andy was talking about someone he follows on YouTube who was talking about distilled water. And Andy was saying, what are your thoughts on distilled water? And he knows how passionate I am about spring water. In fact, he's been with me to come and collect the water, so he knows the lengths I will go to get it. And so distilled water is basically, or reverse osmosis is where they've basically taken everything out of the water. Reverse osmosis is where they basically evaporate, the water so that the chemicals aren't existing in the water anymore. But what it also takes out of the water is the minerals. And mineral content in water is one of the things that makes it healing about it, apart from being hydrating. 80% of our body is water. Some parts are higher water content than that. 80% of your brain is water. Some people have more water on the brain than that, but totally different subject. So we do need a lot of this water, as a primary source of hydration. The question, the amount is different for different bodies depending on how much body you have, how much you need to hydrate. But I do kind of question whether we need 8 cups of water. I'm trying to think of any nomadic tribe, or even, in the hunter-gatherer stage of humanity, whether we, made sure we had 8 cups of water a day. The other thing to understand is that when we had a much more natural diet, the foods we were eating were up to 97% water. The leafy greens, the things that were most bioavailable on the planet were high water content things. So as we evolved and grew and started to cook our food, there was less water content, the quality of the nutrients was different. So what I want you to take away from that is, if you cannot get spring water, what I want you to do is definitely stop drinking out of plastic bottles. Try and find something that's glass, try and find spring water. And if the only thing that you can get is some purified water, What I want you to do is to add a little bit of kombu or seaweed into it, so it will start to remineralize it, even just a little bit of salt to remineralize that water. You don't want to be drinking reverse osmosis. What you're going to find is over a long period of time, it can actually interfere with your gut issues. It can create an imbalance in the pH in your gut, and it can make you feel thirsty because your body's not truly getting the full force of what water is meant to do in not just hydrating us, but replacing, precious minerals in it. Another piece I want to cover is there's this whole trend for buying very expensive machines for purifying your water and alkalizing your water. Now, a lot of the information they use about alkalizing your diet with water is based on glacial milk, the water that came off of, the glaciers that certain cultures drank, and therefore they were well and healthy. It wasn't just the water that made them well, and it wasn't just the pH level of their water. Number one, they were living a life that was completely devoid of the lethal recipes. There wasn't highly processed food in their diet. They were out in nature, and they were connecting, with, the energy all around them, and they didn't have the same kind of exposures to the toxins and environmental issues that we are exposed to. So there's lots of reasons why they were healthy. The other thing about those machines is they're often made in third world countries and create pollution in the waterways of people who don't have the same kind of resources as the people who do, who buy those machines. Remember, you can never alkalize and compensate for an acidic diet through alkaline water. I personally, through my experience just of tasting it and feeling the body, and trust me, I bought many of those machines, different types, and I've invested heavily in it, and I keep coming back to spring water. So if you can't get spring water and your only source is to get purified water, put a little bit of kombu in it. As far as filtration systems, try and go for something that actually mimics nature without destroying nature, if you can. And as far as the 8 cups of water a day, depending on how many high content watery foods you're consuming, your water consumption will vary with it. And that's why it's so important with all of these things is to start to learn to listen, to trust, and understand what it is your body truly needs.